Ethan had never expected to find himself in a situation like this. It had started as just another mission, exploring new planets, gathering data, and mapping uncharted territories. He had been on many missions before, but this one felt different. His spacecraft had malfunctioned during a routine survey, and before he knew it, he was falling through the atmosphere of a planet he had never seen before. The ship's systems were failing fast. The warning alarms blared as Ethan tried to regain control, but the damage was too severe. With a loud crash, the ship hit the ground, sending him flying across the cockpit. Everything went dark. When Ethan awoke, his head throbbed, and the air felt thick and strange. He slowly unbuckled his seatbelt and stood, his legs shaky from the crash. The ship was wrecked, and the surroundings were nothing like the familiar stars and blackness of space. He looked out through the cracked windows and saw towering structures made of strange materials, unlike anything he had seen before. The landscape was both alien and beautiful, a mix of swirling green vines and glowing blue trees that stretched high into the sky. "Where am I?" Ethan muttered to himself, wiping the blood from his forehead. He grabbed his communication device, but there was no signal. His heart sank. He was completely alone. With no other choice, Ethan gathered his gear and decided to explore. He had no idea if this planet was inhabited, or if he could even survive here. But his instincts told him to move, to find shelter, and to figure out what had happened to his ship. After walking for hours, Ethan came across a large stone archway leading into a grand palace. It was covered in vibrant flowers, their colors shifting as if the petals were alive. He hesitated for a moment before stepping forward. The architecture looked like something out of a dream, with towering spires and intricate carvings all around. This was no ordinary place. Suddenly, he heard footsteps behind him. He spun around to see a figure emerging from the shadows. She was tall, taller than any human he had ever met, with striking silver hair that shimmered in the light. Her skin had a faint golden hue, and her eyes, a deep shade of purple, seemed to glow with an intensity that made him freeze. The woman was dressed in elaborate armor, with intricate designs that seemed to shift as she moved. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. She was beautiful, almost too beautiful to be real. And there was an aura of power about her that made him feel small in comparison. This was no ordinary alien. "Who are you?" Ethan asked, trying to keep his voice steady, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he was in the presence of someone very important. The woman regarded him silently, for a moment before speaking. Her voice was soft, but it held a regal quality, like she was used to being obeyed. "I am Queen Zara," she said, her words rich with authority. "And you are the one who crashed upon my world." Ethan's mind raced. A queen? This wasn't just any alien world. He had somehow landed on the planet of a powerful ruler. What was she doing here? How had he found himself in this situation? I'm sorry," Ethan stammered. "My ship malfunctioned, and I crashed. I didn't mean to land here. I was just—" "You are not the first to come here in such a way," Zara interrupted, her gaze sharp. "But you are the first human." Ethan blinked, surprised by her statement. "You knew what I was?" Zara nodded slowly. "We have been watching your kind for a long time. Your people are curious, and that curiosity has led them to us many times before. But you are the first to land on our soil without invitation." Ethan felt the weight of her words. This wasn't just a random encounter. There was something more to it. His accidental crash seemed to have put him in the middle of something far bigger than he could have imagined. But before he could ask more questions, Zara stepped closer to him. "You are lucky to have landed here," she said, her eyes narrowing. "I could have had you imprisoned or worse. But instead, I will offer you a choice. I will allow you to stay and learn of my world, or you may leave. The choice is yours." Ethan didn't know what to say. He was still in shock. His mind was racing, trying to process everything happening so quickly. The queen before him, her offer, the strange world around him, it was all too much to take in. "I thank you, Queen Zara," he said, still unsure of what was going on. I'll stay then. I don't know how I'm going to fix my ship, but I can't just leave. Zara regarded him with a hint of amusement. Very well. You will stay then. But know this, human. Here, you must follow our ways and be careful with your words. They can have consequences. Ethan nodded, still trying to understand the weight of her statement. But before he could ask her what she meant, she turned to lead him into the palace. He followed her through the grand doors, feeling both awed and nervous. As they walked through the palace, Zara spoke little, her eyes scanning the surroundings as if she were always aware of everything. Ethan felt like a child in comparison to her, every step heavy with the realization that he was in the presence of someone powerful. But as they entered a grand chamber, Zara stopped suddenly and turned to him. I must ask you something, human, she said, her voice serious. In my world, tradition holds that if one offers a proposal of marriage and it is accepted, it binds the two for life. Do you understand? Ethan's heart skipped a beat. Proposal? Marriage? The question caught him off guard. He hadn't even thought about that. His mind went blank for a moment. Before he could form a coherent response, his mouth betrayed him. He blurted out, Well, I guess if you want to, we could get married. Zara's eyes widened for just a fraction of a second before her expression softened, a faint smile playing at the corners of her lips. I accept, she said simply. Ethan froze. Did she just say what he thought she said? The words echoed in his mind, but they didn't seem real. He had just accidentally proposed to the alien queen. Ethan stood in stunned silence, his mind struggling to process what had just happened. He had made a mistake, right? There was no way that the beautiful and powerful Queen Zara had actually just accepted his proposal. This was all a misunderstanding, surely. But when he looked into her deep purple eyes, there was no hint of doubt. She wasn't joking. The queen's smile, though soft, was serious, and she took a step closer to him, her golden skin glowing in the light. I accept your proposal, human, she said, her voice full of calm certainty. And as is the custom of my people, once the proposal is accepted, it binds us together. Our worlds are now linked. Ethan blinked, his heart racing. This wasn't a dream, was it? The alien queen was treating his mistake like a serious promise. He tried to speak, but no words came out. His throat felt dry, his mind too full of confusion and disbelief. Zara seemed to sense his discomfort and gave him a small, knowing smile. You are not the first to make such an error. Many have come before you, curious and unsure, and yet they have not left empty-handed. Ethan swallowed hard. He had no idea what she meant, but it felt like he had just stepped into a world far beyond anything he had ever imagined. He didn't even know the rules of this place, let alone the customs of its people. How could an accidental proposal turn into a binding agreement? Was he now part of this alien kingdom? Did he even have a choice? Zara turned, leading him through the grand hall of her palace. Ethan followed, still trying to wrap his mind around everything that had just happened. The palace was magnificent, with towering walls and rooms full of strange, beautiful decorations. The air smelled sweet, like flowers mixed with something else, something foreign. As they walked, Zara spoke again, her voice gentle but firm. In our culture, when a proposal is accepted, it signifies more than just a marriage. It is a union of our worlds, of our fates. It is a promise that one will not abandon the other, no matter the circumstances. We take it very seriously. Ethan wasn't sure how to respond. He didn't even know if he wanted to stay here, let alone get married to the queen of an alien planet. But what could he do now? Zara had already accepted. There was no going back. They entered a large room, and Ethan was immediately struck by the sight of a massive stone table at the center, surrounded by an assortment of strange, glowing objects. Zara gestured for him to sit. The queen's presence was overwhelming, but he did his best to follow her lead. Please sit, Zara said, her voice as warm as the sunlight streaming through the room's tall windows. Ethan sat down, trying not to look too awkward as he adjusted his position. He could feel the weight of Zara's eyes on him as she took a seat across from him, her gaze unwavering. "I must explain to you the significance of what you have done," Zara continued. "In my world, a proposal is not a light matter. It is a contract, one that binds us not only in spirit but in action. Your acceptance is a pledge of trust and loyalty." Ethan felt his stomach twist. This was more serious than he thought. He had no idea what kind of loyalty was expected, or what kind of actions were involved. He was just a man who had accidentally said the wrong thing, and now he was trapped in a foreign world with a queen he didn't know how to deal with. "I didn't mean to," Ethan started, but Zara cut him off with a raised hand. "You did not mean to, but it happened," she said, her tone both understanding and commanding. "You are now a part of this, and I will not allow your commitment to be taken lightly." Ethan looked down, his thoughts spinning. What kind of commitment was he really making? Was he supposed to be her protector, her ally, her husband? Ethan had always considered himself a quick thinker, able to adapt to almost any situation. But this was unlike anything he had ever encountered. His heart still raced as he tried to understand the true weight of Zara's words. The accidental proposal, the acceptance, and now the entire alien world seemed to revolve around him. He couldn't wrap his mind around it, but one thing was clear. He was no longer just an astronaut. He was now part of something far bigger than he ever imagined. Over the next few days, Zara took Ethan deeper into the heart of her world, showing him her kingdom in all its splendor. He learned more about her people, their culture, and their history. It was a world unlike anything he had known, vast and beautiful, with cities of crystal, forests that seemed alive, and oceans that shimmered under a golden sun. Yet, beneath its beauty, there was a quiet tension, a sense of impending change. Ethan and Zara spent most of their time together. Despite the awkwardness that hung in the air, their conversations became more natural as days passed. Zara was kind and patient with him, but she never once wavered in her role as queen. He could feel the weight of her responsibilities and how every decision she made affected her people. But what troubled Ethan the most was the looming question. What was his role in all of this? One afternoon, Zara invited Ethan to a ceremony, a grand event that was held every year to honor the gift of the gods. It was an important tradition in her world, and it seemed that Ethan's presence was required, as if the ceremony was somehow connected to his accidental proposal. They arrived at the central courtyard of the palace, where a large gathering had already taken place. The people stood in rows, their eyes fixed on the massive stone altar at the center. The air was filled with a soft melodic hum, and the atmosphere was charged with energy. Ethan felt out of place, as if he were intruding on something sacred. But Zara seemed at ease, walking with grace and confidence, leading him to a seat next to hers. "This ceremony is one of the oldest traditions of our people," Zara explained softly, her gaze focused on the altar. "It honors the gods who gave us the strength to survive and the power to rule. It is said that once every year the gods bless us with a new gift, something that will guide us toward a better future." Ethan listened closely, his curiosity piqued. He had always believed that the concept of gods was something reserved for ancient civilizations, but here, on this alien world, it seemed very real. What kind of gifts did these gods bestow upon the people? What was he about to witness? The ceremony began with a group of priests, robed in flowing white garments, walking toward the altar. They carried a large, glowing crystal that pulsed with light. As they placed the crystal on the altar, the crowd fell silent, and Zara stood, her expression one of deep respect. The priests began chanting in a language Ethan couldn't understand, their voices rising in a harmonious rhythm. The air around them seemed to shimmer, as if the very atmosphere was reacting to the words they spoke. Then a soft light began to shine from the crystal, growing brighter until it enveloped the entire courtyard. Ethan shielded his eyes, but the light was warm and inviting. It wasn't blinding, rather it felt like a gentle embrace, as if the gods themselves were watching over them. Zara turned to Ethan, her expression serious yet filled with awe. "The Gods are speaking now, she said quietly. This is their blessing for us and for you. Ethan blinked, confused. For me? Zara nodded, her eyes never leaving the crystal. The gods know that our worlds are now linked, and that your presence here will shape our future. They are giving us a gift, a sign that we are on the right path. Before Ethan could ask any more questions, the light from the crystal grew even stronger. It reached out, spreading across the courtyard, and then, as suddenly as it had appeared, it vanished. The crowd stood still for a long moment, waiting in silence. Ethan looked around, unsure of what had just happened. The air felt thick with anticipation. The priests stepped forward, their faces solemn, and one of them spoke. The gods have given us their blessing. The union between our queen and the human is now confirmed. The future of our people is bound to theirs. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. What did that mean? Was this ceremony confirming his accidental proposal? Was this a sign that he had become more involved in Zara's world than he could ever have imagined? Zara turned to him, her eyes locked onto his with a quiet intensity. Do you understand? Now, Ethan, this is no longer just an accident, this is fate. Ethan wasn't sure how to respond. He wasn't sure if he believed in fate or destiny, but he couldn't deny the strange feeling that had settled over him. This was more than just a misunderstanding. This was something that would change his life forever, and somehow, he was now at the center of it all. The ceremony ended, and the crowd began to disperse. But Zara stayed behind, her gaze still fixed on the altar. Ethan stood beside her, feeling both awe and confusion. He had no idea what he was supposed to do now, but one thing was clear: his life on Earth, his mission, his entire existence had changed in a way he couldn't fully grasp yet. I didn't expect this, Ethan said quietly, his voice barely audible above the murmurs of the crowd. I didn't think I'd be part of something like this. Zara turned to him, her expression softening. No one ever expects the gods to intervene, but now you are part of something far greater than yourself. Ethan didn't know what to say to that. He could feel the weight of her words, the responsibility that had somehow fallen on his shoulders. But more than that, he could feel something else, a connection to Zara, to her people, to this strange new world. Maybe he wasn't just a visitor here anymore. Maybe in some way he belonged. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the courtyard, Zara took Ethan's hand, her grip firm and reassuring. The gift of the gods has been given, but it is up to us to shape the future together. Ethan looked into her eyes, his heart pounding. He had never imagined this for himself, but now, standing beside Zara, he realized that his journey had only just begun. Ethan hadn't expected to find himself tangled in a web of politics and royal tradition when he accidentally proposed to Zara, the alien queen. But the more time he spent in her world, the more he realized how serious this commitment was. It wasn't just about an accidental proposal. It was about something far deeper, something that tied him to a planet, a people, and a destiny he had never imagined. For the first time, he truly understood the weight of Zara's role as queen. Every decision she made was scrutinized. Every word she spoke carried meaning. The pressure was palpable, and it was clear that the future of her kingdom rested heavily on her shoulders. Ethan had seen the glimpses of her strength, but now he saw the sacrifices she had made, the people who depended on her, and the loneliness that came with being a leader. Ethan tried his best to help her in any way he could, but he was constantly reminded of how different their worlds were. Zara's advisors had begun to watch him closely, and they weren't entirely pleased with the human's presence. To them, Ethan wasn't just a guest, he was a symbol of change, something they hadn't planned for. One evening, as the golden light of the setting sun bathed the palace in warmth, Zara invited Ethan to join her for a private dinner. She had promised him time to relax, away from the duties of the court, and Ethan couldn't help but feel relieved. For a moment, it seemed like they were just two people sharing a quiet evening together. As they sat down at the table, the conversation flowed easily at first, their laughter echoing through the room. But as the meal went on, the atmosphere shifted. Zara's expression grew more serious and her eyes lost their usual warmth. Ethan noticed, his heart tightening. "You've been quiet, Zara," he said gently, hoping to ease her mind. "What's on your mind?" Zara placed her fork down slowly, looking at him with a mixture of concern and frustration. "I've been thinking," she said softly, "about what happens next, about the future." Ethan furrowed his brow, sensing the weight of her words. "What do you mean?" Zara took a deep breath, her eyes never leaving his. "There are factions within my court that do not agree with your presence here, Ethan. Some believe that your accidental proposal could be a sign of weakness. Others think that you are here to take something from us. Our power, our world." Ethan's chest tightened. He had feared something like this might happen, but hearing it from Zara made it real. He never wanted to cause harm to her or her people. All he had wanted was to find a way back home. But now, his very presence was shaking the foundations of her kingdom. "I never meant to disrupt anything," Ethan said quietly, his voice filled with regret. I don't know what I was thinking when I said those words. I didn't realize it would mean all of this." Zara sighed, her face softening as she reached out and touched his hand gently. "I know, but your presence here has become a symbol, Ethan, a symbol of change, and change is never easy. People fear it, even if it's for the better." Ethan nodded, understanding the burden Zara carried. She was the queen and her people looked to her for guidance. But now, with him by her side, everything felt uncertain. It wasn't just about politics. It was about her heart, her kingdom, and what they both wanted for the future. "There's more at stake than just us," Zara continued. "My people have long relied on tradition to guide them. They don't trust the unknown, and..." The days after Ethan's conversation with Zara were filled with a mixture of tension and hope. Zara had shared her fears, and Ethan had promised to stand by her, no matter what. But the reality of their situation was becoming more complicated, with each passing day. As time went on, the undercurrents of unease grew stronger within the palace. Zara's advisors watched him closely, whispering behind his back. Ethan felt like an outsider in a world where he had no place. He didn't belong here, and yet, he was becoming a symbol, something he hadn't wanted and now couldn't escape. It was early one morning when things took a turn for the worse. Zara had summoned Ethan to the royal chambers for what she called an urgent meeting. He had grown used to these meetings, but today's tone felt different. There was a tension in the air, one that made Ethan's stomach churn. As he entered the chamber, he saw Zara standing near the large window, her back to him. Her posture was stiff, her face more serious than he had ever seen it. The weight of her responsibility seemed to hang over her like a dark cloud. "Zara?" Ethan asked cautiously, taking a step forward. She didn't turn to face him immediately. When she finally did, her eyes were filled with a mixture of sorrow and resolve. "Ethan," she said quietly, her voice heavy with emotion, "I have made a terrible mistake." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean? What's going on?" Zara took a deep breath, her gaze falling to the floor for a moment. "There are traitors in my court, people who have been plotting against me and against you." Ethan frowned, confused and alarmed. "What do you mean? What are they planning?" Zara moved closer, her expression hardening. "I didn't want to believe it at first, but it's true. Some of my advisors have been secretly working to undermine our alliance. They think that your presence here is a threat to my reign, to my power. They are afraid of what our bond means, and they want to use you to further their own agenda." Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. He had known there were people who didn't trust him, but he hadn't realized how deep the resentment ran. He never wanted to be a pawn in anyone's game, especially not in Zara's world. "Who are they?" he asked, his voice tight. Zara hesitated for a moment before answering. "A few of my closest advisors. One of them is General Velis, a man who has served my family for years. He's ambitious and power-hungry. He believes that if he can discredit our union, he can take control of the throne. Another is Minister Talia, a woman who has always had her own interests in mind. She sees you as a means to an end, Ethan. Ethan clenched his fists at his sides. He had been caught in a political battle he hadn't asked for, but he couldn't sit back and let it happen. Zara needed him, and he wasn't about to let her down. "What do we do?" he asked, his voice filled with determination. Zara's eyes softened as she reached out to touch his arm. "I don't know," she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. "I've trusted these people for so long, but now I'm not sure who I can trust anymore." Ethan stepped closer to her, his gaze steady. "We can't let them destroy everything. We'll expose them, Zara. We'll fight this together." Zara nodded slowly, a flicker of hope in her eyes. "I don't want to lose you, Ethan. I've never felt more vulnerable than I do now, but I also know that I can't let fear control me. I have to fight for what's right." The air between them seemed to crackle with tension, but also with a sense of unity. Despite the betrayal, despite the dangers, they were in this together. Later, that day Ethan and Zara met privately in the Royal Library to plan their next move. Zara's mind was racing, trying to figure out how to handle the political web that had ensnared her. She had spent her whole life fighting to protect her people, but now she was fighting for her very throne. The stakes had never been higher. "Need evidence," Ethan said, his voice steady and calm. "We need proof that they're working against you." Zara nodded, her eyes thoughtful. "I've had spies watching them for weeks, but it's dangerous. If we move too quickly, we might tip them off." Ethan glanced around the library, his mind working fast. "We'll need a distraction. Something big enough to get their attention, but subtle enough to keep us safe." Zara met his gaze, her expression determined. "I think I know just the thing." Over the next few days, they put their plan into motion. Zara called a secret meeting with her most trusted generals, leaving only a select few of her advisors in the dark. Ethan stayed in the shadows, listening carefully to the discussions and helping Zara strategize. As they worked together, Ethan began to feel a growing sense of respect for Zara. She wasn't just a queen. She was a leader, someone who had faced countless challenges with strength and wisdom. But now, for the first time, he saw the cracks in her armor. She was vulnerable, just like anyone else, and that vulnerability made her even more dangerous to her enemies. The trap was set. Zara's plan was simple but effective. She would announce a new alliance with a neighboring planet, a powerful one that had been watching her for years. The news would spread quickly, and her enemies would be forced to reveal themselves in their attempt to sabotage the alliance. The day of the announcement arrived, and the tension in the palace was unbearable. Ethan could feel it in his bones, the nervous energy crackling through the air. Zara stood before her court, her voice firm and strong as she spoke of the new alliance. As expected, General Velis and Minister Talia attempted to protest, trying to sway the court against Zara's decision. But Zara was ready. With the evidence they had gathered, they exposed the traitors for what they were, corrupt individuals plotting to take power for themselves. The court was in an uproar, but Zara stood tall, unwavering. She had won. The traitors were removed from their positions, and Zara's position as queen was secure. For now. As the dust settled, Ethan watched Zara from across the room. She looked exhausted, but there was a glimmer of relief in her eyes. They had done it. They had fought back and they had won. But even in the victory, Ethan knew that the battle was far from over. There would always be those who sought to tear Zara down, to take her throne. But for the first time, he felt certain of one thing. No matter what came next, he would stand by her side. The palace was quiet, but the tension in the air was thick. The past few days had been a whirlwind. Zara had faced betrayal and political unrest, and she had emerged victorious. But the battle was far from over. Ethan knew that as he walked beside her in the grand halls of the palace, their lives had changed forever. The queen's enemies hadn't given up, and there were always new challenges to face. But now, for the first time, Ethan felt truly connected to Zara, not just as an accidental suitor, but as a partner, someone who had shared in her struggles and victories. He had spent the last few days thinking about what this all meant. The accident that had brought him to this alien world, the unexpected proposal, and the bond that had grown between him and Zara. It had all started as a mistake, but now it felt like fate. Ethan had never expected to find himself in a position like this, standing by the side of an alien queen in a strange world. But now he realized he couldn't imagine leaving her. Zara had led them through victory, but it was clear to him that she needed more than just his support in battle. She needed someone who could stand with her in all things. As he looked at her, he saw the weight of her crown, the responsibility she carried for her people, and the quiet strength in her eyes. She wasn't just a queen. She was a woman who had made impossible decisions and who still had so much to give. The two of them were sitting together in the royal garden now, the gentle breeze rustling the leaves of the strange trees. The soft glow of the evening light bathed everything in a golden hue. It was a peaceful moment, a rare break in the chaos of royal life. Ethan couldn't help but smile as he looked at Zara. She had changed since he first arrived. She wasn't the distant queen who had given him no choice but to be a part of her world. She had become someone he deeply admired and, in many ways, loved. She had proven to him that she was more than just a ruler. She was a leader, a protector, and a woman who cared about her people with everything she had. But there was still one question that lingered in the back of Ethan's mind, a question that had been on his mind since the moment Zara accepted his accidental proposal. What did it all mean for them? What did it mean for their futures? He looked at Zara, who was staring out at the horizon, lost in thought. Zara, Ethan began softly, unsure of how to put his thoughts into words. What happens now, after everything we've been through? What do we do next? Zara turned her head to meet his gaze, her eyes serious but not without warmth. She had always carried herself with a sense of control, but now there was a vulnerability in her expression, one that spoke of the uncertainty she had been feeling too. I've been asking myself the same thing, she said quietly. There are so many things I must consider. My people, my role as queen, and our bond. Ethan felt a twinge of anxiety. Do you think it was a mistake? The proposal, I didn't mean to do it, but it feels like everything has led to this. Zara looked at him, her expression softening. She reached out and placed her hand over his, her fingers warm against his skin. I don't believe it was a mistake, Ethan. You didn't know what you were doing, but in that moment you said something that meant more to me than I can explain. Your words, even if they were accidental,